Now, before I finish final assembly and paint, I wanted to stop here and do a build review and still be able to show you guys some of what's underneath the paint before I get to covering everything up with that in the camo scheme and weathering. Build-wise, this kit is not for beginners. Personally, I loved it. It was great. It was not without its problems. That said, I will do another MiniArt kit now that I know what to expect. The engineering is actually very precise. You really have to pay attention to what you're doing, especially gluing up stuff like the suspension arms. If you put just a tiny little bit too much glue on, that sucker is not going to work anymore, regardless of what your intentions were. It's now like frozen seized right to the vehicle, so now you got to cut it or break it off to reposition it. In my case, several on this side glued down, but they all glued down even with the workbench, so that works fine. I just glued everything else down and that worked fine too. The other problem is the soft plastic. It's almost a toy-like type of plastic. It machines well, it glues well, it textures well, but you have issues that I'll get into in a few minutes as I go through it. First off, the lower hull. I've already gone over the suspension issue, but that's with the gluing. Pros, very nicely detailed. These can all be made to work. I question whether or not the plastic is up to the stress test. You get working road wheels. There's a bit of a con there too I'll get into in a minute. And you get, good fitment. There was really nothing wrong. Everything went together really, really well with the lower hull in itself. The plastic's a problem. The torsion bars, even if you get these to work, I don't know how long they would work if you had them glued in, just because the plastic's so soft. It does shear very easily. I had a lot of problems with these. They're supposed to be like a torsion bar spring to help you raise and lower the deck so they're not so heavy. A lot of those were broken and very easily busted just by twisting it. There's a lot of cleanup to do on them, and that's another problem with the plastic. There's a lot of tight tolerances. Things I questioned was the working wheels. Now, if you take one of these, this one still spins, which is really cool. But I don't understand why you would want working wheels on a kit that has glued together non-functioning tracks. I get that they want to do it, it's really cool, but I really question how strong this joint is going to be. And honestly, I don't have a problem just gluing the whole thing right on. I don't think there's any benefit to leaving it loose unless that's your thing. Still loose as well. It says to use 90 links. I ended up needing 91. And you only get enough to do 90 a side, so I ended up using one of the toothless links. It'll be hidden. Screens went down fine. Fuel tanks are a pain in the butt. The PE is not marked for a fold line. There's kind of a little bump where you kind of loop it back onto itself and glue it down. Don't squish it flat. I did on one of these, and I couldn't get the thing to stretch properly. I also goofed and started gluing it to the fuel drum before I got it over the top. And this side's a little too short, doesn't quite meet up. And the other side, I waited until everything was kind of in place before I squished the PE with the tweezers to push it as far back as I could get. And it's actually a little too long, and I ended up kind of crumpling that up. I'll try and fix that up before I do some weathering. If not, well, I can hide both of those with a little bit of mud. That shouldn't be a problem. Fenders, there's a few issues. Fender machine guns are not drilled out. I drilled out the muzzles. But inside, I didn't bother putting in the 2 ammo cans. I didn't bother putting in the spade grips, and there's actually a part missing. It's shown on the instructions installed, but it doesn't show how to install it. That's part K25. I ended up not using it anyway, and they installed just fine. And like I said, I didn't bother with any of the other stuff. There's a little bit of photo etch. Nothing fancy. Goes together pretty easily. These are ice grousers. They don't show you how to attach them to the tracks. I didn't bother, I just left them like that. Another one of these very fragile torsion springs. The external fuel tanks, there are no markings for where to put them. You kind of have to eyeball it and make sure that you put these together at the same time, because once you mount this on, you know, you have no place to put this. It's actually keyed in. There's a location spots for it. Straps, I painted these because there's an unditching log going there, so that's going to be painted and installed separately. But the straps are really nice, but a royal pain in the butt. They have no fold lines for where you're supposed to fold them, even though there are specific ones for specific locations. And then there's that tiny triangular little hoop. I've got one because I lost one. I had to fabricate a new one, but that's... So it's really fun to take these straps and you have to fold them back in on themselves and then put the loop in, or put the loop on first, and then kind of eyeball where you have to fold this thing and glue it. So that one looks way too loose, but I'm done with it. These were a pain in the butt. They're really springy. The slightest little bit of load, if you let go, that thing's launched across the room. And I'm actually surprised I found that last one, but it was too late. I'd already replaced it. The other side fender, same thing. Everything same. I just pre-painted some of the stuff before I install it because it's hard to get in there. Turret's really nice. I didn't bother putting any interior into it. Just no point. There's a little bit, but there's not enough to justify leaving the hatches open, so I just glued them shut. These, again, because of the soft plastic, there was a lot of part lines everywhere, and these things are really fragile. As you noticed, I had to replace one. I used some evergreen, but that went okay. There is supposed to be a little bit of a seam, but on some pictures I've seen like no seam at all. Like these were really nicely casted. So I tried to replicate kind of a... There's a bit of a seam there, but it's kind of hard to see. Even on the ones that were removed from service and put onto turreted bunkers for Overwatch, looked like in really nice shape. There's no fold lines for any of the photo etch. That just actually all bent and snapped into place perfectly. I was really surprised. I haven't bothered putting the periscopes in yet. They're clear, so that'll be done later. I replicated the texture by using Tester's liquid cement and a short stippled brush, and using a stippling action blent, and I actually didn't even need any putty on that. Barrel's one piece. DHSK heavy machine gun is 24 pieces by itself. The ring is 3 pieces on its own, an upper, a lower, and then there's that little handle. The gun even has photo etch. There's a photo etch piece. You can kind of see it glinting here and there on this side. There's the triggers. And there's the sight, the iron sight. So far, really good kit. I'm a little blown away. Now I know what to expect from a MiniArt kit. I will gladly get another one. This is a really good deep dive kit where I don't have to do anything as far as, you know, aftermarket goes. It's all really good, but it is a lot to build. I don't know if I bother doing single link tracks again. I much prefer doing the metal ones. If for nothing else, it's just the speed. This is just so much cleanup. It took so long to clean up all these tracks. Oh, and for those that are wondering, the photo etch on the back of the turret, there's no guide, and I don't know what happened here. I used the same super glue all the way around, and these two whited out on me. Not that it matters because you can't see anything. But what's really cool is the little tarp they give you for the back. If you eyeball it right, they line up just perfect. Next time you'll see it'll be painting, I hope, or painted. I'll try and record stuff from inside the spray booth. It's not really meant for it. Once I get the other run of tracks done. And we'll be doing Vallejo, which is, sorry, it came off, it's Russian 4BO green. She is all painted up. That's just the raw paint as it came out. No sealer, no weathering yet. And only the 2 red and white stars for decals. That's it for markings. And they went down pretty good. All the gun barrels, the ice cleats, the headlight were all painted with Vallejo NATO Black. I didn't spray quite as tight a demarcation line as I would have liked, but it'll do. I had quite a few problems spraying the Vallejo. Didn't seem to matter if I used tap water or Vallejo thinner, or if I used flow improver or retarder. It didn't seem to matter. Neither my Iwata nor my Badger seemed to really like them, but I did manage to get them down. The only parts left to put on are the tracks, which are painted with my track color, which is a mix of Tamiya, same mix as Andy uses from Andy's Hobby Headquarters, and then I splattered on a bunch of Vallejo rust washes. There's light rust, rust, and dark rust, so there's a little bit of all of this on either side, and then they'll get further weathered once everything's put together and put on. And the tow cables, which are now made of wire. And the other ends are just sitting on some toothpicks. So once I get these looped in with the cleats and those looped or glued into place, everything else will be ready for weathering. This little thing. If you didn't see it on the my Facebook page, this thing builds up beautifully, but it is really finicky. So we've got the tow cables on. They'll get touched up a bit. Just some electrical wire I had kicking around. Some of the paint did chip off, but I did burnish it with the Novacan black that I use for my metal tracks. And while it wasn't perfect by a long shot, it still allowed some tooth for the paint, but I had to do a lot of working to get kind of a natural looking bend here while it looped around, and that hooks under here. And this versus what they gave you to work with in the kit. Yeah, that's not going to work.